When you hear a title like How to Make People Do What You Want, there is this immediate, almost visceral reaction.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It sounds a bit like, a villain's handbook.
Right. It evokes these images of like Machiavellian maneuvering or maybe boardroom backstabbing or even someone trying to hypnotize you with a swinging pocket watch.
Yeah, the cartoon villain approach.
Exactly. The very phrase just implies this zero-sum game, right? Where one person wins by basically overriding the free will of another person.
And it definitely triggers a defensive posture for most people. I mean, we are culturally conditioned to view the mechanics of persuasion with deep suspicion.
Which makes sense.
It does, because, we usually only notice persuasion when it's being done poorly, like when it actually feels like coercion.
Yeah, when it feels slimy.
Right. But the moment you actually dive into the source material we are examining today, that entire supervillain aesthetic just, well, it evaporates.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the reality of this text is something entirely different. It really isn't a guide to dark magic or, like, psychological brute force.
Not at all.
What we are really looking at here is a profoundly grounded, structural breakdown of practical psychology.
I'd say it's an exploration of the underlying mechanics of human communication.
Yeah, and the fundamental evolutionary realities of why human beings take action in the first place.
Which really serves as the perfect mission statement for this deep dive. Our objective today is to extract the core insights from this material. We want to show you that mastering these concepts isn't about controlling people like puppets on a string.
Because that approach is just, well, it's not only unethical, it's actually neurologically and strategically inefficient.
Exactly. Instead, we are looking at a framework for behavioral alignment. It's about creating a communication environment that fosters stronger relationships.
And generates better outcomes for everyone involved.
Right. Simply by understanding the biological and psychological realities of the person sitting across from you.
And that is why this matters so intensely to you, the listener. Whether you are prepping to pitch a project in a high-stakes M&A negotiation or trying to get a massively fractured team aligned on a single product launch.
Or even if you're just intensely curious about the hidden drivers behind everyday human behavior.
Exactly. This deep dive is your blueprint. We are examining the actual architecture of ethical influence. And like any good architecture, you cannot build the superstructure until you fundamentally understand the ground you are building on.
That's a great way to put it.
And in the context of human behavior, this text argues that the absolute bedrock is the science of motivation.
The text is totally uncompromising on this point, actually. It posits that every single human action is downstream of four primary engines.
Right. Needs, goals, fears, and desires.
Yeah. And on the surface, that sounds like, a standard psychological truism, like, sure.
Well, right. It sounds obvious.
But when you start looking at the mechanics of those four drivers, you realize it's actually a map of the human nervous system.
When I was reading that section, I immediately thought of it like the hidden code running a piece of enterprise software.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Think about it. When you're clicking a mouse on a screen, you're interacting with the user interface, the surface level.
Right.
Let's say you're in a meeting making a pitch, and you're outlining the ROI, presenting the spreadsheet. That's the UI.
Yeah, the front end.
Exactly. If the person across the table isn't agreeing, the program isn't executing the command. The amateur move is to just click the button harder, right? To repeat your logical argument louder, apply pressure, make demands.
Which never works.
Right. Because if you don't understand the underlying code running in the background of their mind, their specific motivations, that program is never going to respond.
You are writing in Python, and their operating system only reads C++.
Exactly.
And to take your coding analogy a step further, it's not just that you're using the wrong language. If you hit the wrong motivation, you might be actively triggering their firewall.
Oh, wow. Triggering the firewall.
Yeah, because if we look closely at how the text separates those four drivers, needs, goals, fears, and desires, they actually operate on entirely different neural pathways.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, needs and feels are predominantly processed in the older parts of the brain, like the amygdala.
The lizard brain, basically.
Right, the primitive part. They are protective, survival instincts. They're fast, reactive, and totally rooted in preservation. You need physiological and psychological security, and you fear losing it.
Makes sense.
But on the other side of the spectrum, goals and desires are processed in the prefrontal cortex and driven by dopaminergic pathways.
So they're aspirational.
Exactly. They pull us forward toward an imagined future state. They require higher cognitive load and imagination.
So if I'm trying to influence a decision in a boardroom, I can't just guess whether their brain is currently operating in survival mode or aspirational mode. I have to actively diagnose it.
You have to run the diagnostic before you ever deploy the pitch. Let's look at a high-level corporate restructuring, for example. You are brought in to pitch a massive technological overhaul to a legacy department.
Okay, pretty standard scenario.
Yeah, and if you focus your entire presentation on the aspirational goals of the software, the unprecedented efficiency, the desire for industry disruption, the beautiful, streamlined future.
Right, all the flashy stuff.
Exactly. But the department head you are pitching to is fundamentally driven by a fear of technological obsolescence. Or maybe a deep-seated need to maintain their legacy status and job security.
Oh, I see where this is going.
What happens?
The aspirational message completely bounces off the armor. Or actually, worse, my talk of efficiency and disruption actively exacerbates their fear.
Yes, exactly.
Because to them, efficiency translates to redundancy,
Yeah.
which translates to, I'm going to be replaced.
Yeah.
My pitch just became a literal threat to their survival.
Precisely the firewall effect. You haven't aligned your message with their operational reality.
Right.
And the source material argues that if you don't understand their specific motivation in that specific moment, any attempt at persuasion is worse than noise. It's potentially antagonistic.
You're basically asking them to run a program their current operating system views as malware.
That's a perfect way to phrase it.
Well, that structural reality makes perfect sense. But I feel like it introduces a massive practical challenge for you, the listener.
How so?
Let's assume I've done the diagnostic work. I've realized that the executive I'm pitching is operating entirely out of a fear of losing market share. Their amygdala is running the show.
Okay, good first step.
But once I know that, the text makes it incredibly clear. I still can't just burst into their office and start laying out a purely logical argument about how my solution mitigates that risk.
Right.
There is a psychological toll booth I have to pass through first.
And it is the most critical toll booth in human interaction. The text insists that building rapport and trust, specifically through making people feel understood, is the non-negotiable prerequisite to any persuasion.
Okay, I want to challenge this, because this is where theory often collides violently with reality.
Sure, lay it on me.
In a fast-paced corporate environment, time is our most constrained resource. We have, 30-minute windows to pitch complex solutions?
If you're lucky.
Right. So the idea of building rapport often gets translated into painful, performative small talk.
Oh, the forced chat about the weather.
Exactly. How was your golf game? How are the kids? It feels entirely disconnected from the substantive work. Isn't this focus on rapport just a polite relic of a slower era of business?
It's a completely understandable pushback, actually. But it stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of what the text means by rapport.
Okay, clarify that for me.
The source isn't advocating for small talk. Small talk is social lubrication. Rapport, in the context of behavioral psychology, is the establishment of a baseline psychological safety that is required for cognitive processing.
So we're talking about lowering the threat response.
We're talking about actively disarming the amygdala. When you walk into a negotiation, the other person's brain is subconsciously scanning you for threats. Are you here to take their resources? To undermine their status?
So they're on high alert?
Always. And if that underlying neurological alarm is ringing, their prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for evaluating your complex logical argument, is starved of resources.
Wow, so they literally can't process the logic.
Not effectively, no. The text uses a very specific, deliberate phrase. It says, make people feel understood. It does not say paraphrase their points.
Right.
It mandates an emotional, physiological transaction.
The distinction between hearing someone and making them feel understood is massive. It's the difference between just auditing a conversation and actively participating in it.
Exactly.
I mean, I can repeat someone's objections back to them word for word, which proves my auditory cortex is functioning, sure.
Yeah, you heard the sounds.
Right, but if my tone or my posture implies that I think their objection is stupid, they don't feel understood at all. They feel managed.
And humans despise being managed.
Oh, totally.
True active listening, what we might call tactical empathy, requires you to validate the emotional reality behind their words, even if you vehemently disagree with their ultimate conclusion.
Okay, that's hard to do.
It is. But you are communicating, I see the world exactly as you are seeing it right now. And when a human being genuinely feels that their perspective has been accurately perceived and validated by another person, there is a literal physiological response.
Like what?
The vagus nerve stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, heart rate drops, defensive posturing relaxes.
So how does the listener deploy tactical empathy when the clock is kicking in that 30-minute meeting? If small talk is out, how do we disarm the alarm system quickly?
You do it by leading with an accusation audit.
An accusation audit.
Yeah. You lay down the tracks before trying to drive the train of your argument. You start the meeting by preemptively addressing their deepest concerns, the fears you diagnosed in step 1.
Give me an example.
You might say something like, before we look at the integration timeline, I want to address the fact that moving to this new platform seems like it's going to completely disrupt your Q3 deliverables.
Okay.
And you follow up with, and it probably feels like we are pushing an unproven system onto a team that is already at maximum capacity.
Wow. That feels incredibly counterintuitive. You're intentionally bringing up the negative aspects of your own pitch right out of the gate.
You are bringing them up because they are already screaming in the other person's head.
That's fair.
If you don't name the fear controls the room. By articulating their exact concern with precision, you aren't just showing that you did your homework, you are proving that you are safe.
You invite them to elaborate.
Exactly. You listen not to formulate your rebuttal, but to confirm their reality.
So once they say, yes, exactly, that is what I'm worried about, the tension just breaks.
The tension breaks, the toll booth opens, the trust is established, not through golf anecdotes, but through deep cognitive alignment.
It's a phenomenal mechanism.
Yeah.
You are essentially offering them a psychological sanctuary.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
And once that foundation of safety is laid, once we've bypassed the threat response, we transition from the groundwork to the superstructure.
Time to actually build.
Right. We have to actually deliver the payload of our argument. And this brings us to the architecture of the message itself, focusing on clarity, the balance of logic and emotion, and the concept of framing.
The source material treats the construction of the message with the precision of a structural engineer. It really highlights that raw data, no matter how objectively true it is inert.
Inert, like it just sits there.
Exactly. To initiate behavior change, information must be structured dynamically.
Let's focus on the text assertion that framing information changes perception. I find this to be, honestly, the most intellectually thrilling part of the material.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Think of framing like a high-end camera lens.
Okay, let's hear it.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If you were standing at the base of a sweeping, formidable mountain range, the raw geological facts of that landscape are immutable. They don't change.
Right, a rock is a rock.
But as a photographer, you control the frame. If you put a macro lens on the camera and shoot a tight, claustrophobic close-up of a single, jagged, imposing boulder in the foreground, the resulting image evokes harshness, barrier, and danger.
Yeah, the viewer feels intimidated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you switch to a wide-angle lens and capture the sun rising over the snow-capped peaks with a clear path winding upward, the viewer feels awe. They feel possibility.
That's a great visual.
You didn't alter a single atom of the mountain. You just changed the frame. And by changing the frame, you entirely rewrote how the human nervous system responds to the data.
That analogy perfectly encapsulates the mechanics of cognitive framing.
Right.
Yeah, because in behavioral economics, particularly drawing on Kahneman and Tversky's prospect theory, we know that human beings do not evaluate information in an absolute vacuum.
We always need context.
We evaluate information relative to a reference point, and we are heavily influenced by how the options are presented.
Right, like the classic example of medical framing.
Oh, yeah, the surgery one.
A doctor telling a patient a surgery has a 90% survival rate versus a 10% mortality rate.
It is mathematically identical.
Exactly. But the psychological impact is completely asymmetrical.
The 10% mortality frame triggers loss aversion. That's our evolutionary tendency to weigh potential losses much heavier than equivalent gains.
So it activates the amygdala.
Yes. While the 90% survival frame anchors on the positive outcome, the text is demanding that we become conscious architects of these frames.
But notice how my camera analogy naturally drifted toward how the picture feels. This connects directly to the text's mandate to appeal to both logic and emotion.
Right, because emotion is the engine and logic is the steering wheel.
Oh, I love that.
It's a brilliant way to synthesize it. The text warns that a purely logical argument often stalls out. You can walk into that boardroom with the most impenetrable data set, right?
The spreadsheets to end all spreadsheets.
The most elegantly formatted spreadsheet proving your solution saves the company capital. But if you do not connect that logic to an emotion, if you do not tie it to a fear they are desperate to alleviate or a desire they are desperate to achieve, the logic has zero kinetic energy.
It's just numbers.
Right. We are biological creatures, we act on emotion, and then we use logic to justify the action post hoc.
But conversely, the text warns against purely emotional appeals too, right?
Yes, absolutely. Because a purely emotional argument without a structural foundation of logic is basically a sugar crash.
A sugar crash.
Yeah, it might get an immediate euphoric reaction in the room, but the moment the person leaves the room and their prefrontal cortex re-engages, the argument collapses under scrutiny.
And then what?
It creates buyer's remorse, which instantly degrades the trust you worked so hard to build in the first place. You must fuse the two.
It's the difference between pitching a new remote work policy by saying, this policy reduces commute times by an average of 4.2 hours a week.
Which is sterile, inert logic.
Right. Versus saying, this policy reclaims 4.2 hours of your week, giving you the freedom to finally be home in time to have dinner with your kids.
Exactly. You have taken the undeniable mathematical logic and framed it squarely inside a deep human desire.
But I have to push back here, because we are dancing on the edge of a philosophical cliff.
Okay, let's go there.
If framing is just choosing the best lens to evoke a specific emotional response, where is the line between ethical translation and selective omission?
That's a very fair question.
I mean, if I deliberately frame out that jagged, dangerous rock in the photo so the path looks easy, am I not lying by omission? Is framing just the corporate speak version of spinning the truth?
That is the pivotal question. And the distinction lies in the concept of alignment versus deception.
Okay, unpack that.
If you are hiding the jagged rock because the path is genuinely dangerous and you know it will harm them, but you want their money anyway, that is manipulation.
Right, that's just lying.
You are using the frame to deceive. But if the path is genuinely safe and beneficial, and you know they are paralyzed by an irrational fear of jagged rocks, you use the wide-angle frame to show them the summit so they have the courage to start walking.
Oh, I see.
Ethical framing, as the source material envisions it, is about translation. You are taking your goal and translating it into a language that resonates with their specific motivations.
So you aren't altering the reality of the data.
No, you are adjusting the focal length to highlight the facets of reality that serve their needs as much as yours.
It's ensuring the cargo reaches the destination by putting it in a vehicle the other person actually wants to drive.
Precisely.
And it requires immense clarity and confidence to execute. But the text introduces a fascinating complication right about here.
The nonverbals.
Yes, we've been dissecting the architecture of the spoken word, the framing, the logic, the emotion. But the source points out that a staggering amount of this data transfer between humans happens completely silently.
The silent communicators. The text states unequivocally that body language reveals true feelings and intentions. And from a neurological standpoint, nonverbal communication is a high-bandwidth, continuous stream of data that our brains actually prioritize over verbal information.
It acts as a continuous subconscious polygraph test.
It really does.
It's fascinating because we all think we are so sophisticated with our words, but our biology just betrays us.
Every time.
You can construct the most flawlessly framed argument. You can perfectly balance the logic and the emotion. Your script can be an absolute masterpiece.
Right.
But if your shoulders are hunched, your jaw is locked tight, and your feet are angled toward the exit, your limbic system is screaming a totally different narrative to the room.
And the listener's brain is going to believe the limbic system over the script every single time.
And we must explore why the brain does that.
Well, the neocortex, the part of the brain responsible for language, is evolutionarily young. It's slow, it requires effort, and crucially, it is highly capable of deception.
We can lie with words quite easily.
Exactly. But the limbic system, which controls our autonomic physiological responses, is ancient. It is fast, reactive, and incredibly difficult to consciously override.
Right.
When we experience stress, hesitation, or deceit, the limbic system automatically initiates protective behaviors.
Like what kind of behaviors?
Well, we might rub the back of our neck to lower our heart rate, we might cross our arms to protect vital organs, or we might engage in microexpressions that flash across the face in literally milliseconds.
So our evolutionary history dictates that we trust the older, faster, more honest system.
Yeah.
If someone's words say, I am fully confident in this proposal, but their hands are trembling and they're physically retreating from the table, my brain flags a massive congruence error.
Congruence error is the perfect term for it.
Yeah.
Discrepancy creates an immediate spike in suspicion. If we tie this back to the prerequisite of trust, a nonverbal congruence error is catastrophic.
Because it breaks the illusion.
Right. If your words project clarity and alignment, but your body language leaks anxiety or hidden self-serving intentions, the listener's amygdala re-engages immediately.
The trust bridge collapses.
The toll booth drops right back down.
Which means, practically speaking, you have to master a two-way flow of nonverbal data.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is. First, you have to calibrate to the other person. If I'm using tactical empathy, and I see the other person visibly exhale, uncross their arms, and lean forward,
Yeah.
I have physiological proof that the trust is built.
You're reading their green lights.
Right. But even more critically, I have to manage my own physical presence. I can't just memorize the pitch. I have to genuinely internalize the belief that what I am offering is beneficial.
Because if you don't believe it,
If I am secretly trying to screw them over, my limbic system is going to leak that intent. I have to embody the message, not just recite it.
and that is the essence of projected confidence. Your internal state must be perfectly aligned with your external presentation. Yes. When you truly believe in the mutual benefit of your proposal, your body language naturally opens up. Your gestures become expansive, your vocal resonance drops to a calmer register. You project the physiological markers of safety and authority.
Okay, up until this point in the deep dive, we have focused almost exclusively on the microdynamics.
The one-on-one stuff.
Exactly. The speaker and the listener. Diagnosing individual fears, framing the message for a single mind, managing the body language in the room.
Right.
But the source material widens the lens significantly here. It acknowledges that human beings do not evaluate risk or make decisions in an isolated vacuum.
We are profoundly social creatures.
We look around to see what the tribe is doing before we make a move.
We are hardwired for social cohesion. The text identifies social needs right alongside individual needs and fears.
So what does this all mean for influence?
To navigate this, the text introduces two incredibly powerful psychological catalysts that accelerate alignment.
Social proof and reciprocity.
Exactly.
Let's elevate these concepts beyond the standard introductory examples. I mean, we all know that social proof is why we check reviews online.
Right. 5 stars versus 2 stars.
And we know reciprocity is why we feel compelled to send a holiday card to someone who unexpectedly sent us one.
The guilt trip.
Yeah, the subtle guilt. But in the context of high-stakes influence like enterprise sales, geopolitical negotiations, or massive organizational shifts, how do these mechanisms actually function?
They function as massive cognitive load reducers.
Cognitive load reducers.
Yeah. Let's examine social proof through the lens of evolutionary psychology and risk mitigation.
Okay.
When an executive is facing a $1 million decision, the cognitive burden of evaluating every possible failure point is overwhelming.
It's paralyzing.
It activates the fear of the unknown, the fear of making a career-ending mistake.
Right.
When you introduce social proof, when you demonstrate that 3 of their biggest competitors have successfully integrated your solution, you aren't just giving them a data point.
You're giving them an out.
You are providing an evolutionary shortcut. You are signaling, hey, other members of the tribe have walked into this cave and they did not get eaten by a bear.
Wow. The cognitive load drops.
Exactly. The fear of isolation is neutralized by the safety of consensus. In the famous Ash conformity experiments, we saw just how deeply the desire to align with the group influences individual perception.
Where people would literally agree with the wrong answer just to fit in.
Yes. By leveraging social proof, you are harnessing that deep-seated drive for social safety to validate your logical frame.
It's risk outsourcing. You are letting the herd test the water.
That's a great phrase for it.
And what about reciprocity? The text states that reciprocity encourages cooperation. But mechanically, why is the urge to balance the scales so overwhelming in human beings?
It's rooted in the biological concept of reciprocal altruism.
Okay, tell me more.
In evolutionary terms, humans survived by cooperating. If I share my food with you today when you are starving, the implicit biological contract is that you will share with me tomorrow when I am starving.
Tit for tat.
Exactly, and the neurochemistry of this is profound. When someone offers us value unconditionally, when they give us crucial information, when they make a meaningful concession.
Or even when they offer us true active listening, like we talked about earlier.
Yes. It triggers the release of oxytocin, which fosters bonding, but it also creates a subtle underlying tension, a social debt.
It's almost like a mild psychological discomfort until the ledger is balanced.
Exactly. We are driven to resolve that tension by returning the favor, thereby solidifying the cooperative relationship.
So how do you use that?
Well, if you want to encourage cooperation in a hostile negotiation, you don't start by making demands.
Right.
You start by conceding something of value early on. You trigger the reciprocal reflex. The other party's nervous system pushes them to match your cooperative stance just to maintain social equilibrium.
Okay, let's take a breath and survey the landscape we've just uncovered. Because when you stack these mechanisms on top of each other, it is formidable.
It really is.
We are diagnosing the deepest hidden drivers of the human psyche. We are strategically bypassing the brain's threat detection system through tactical empathy.
Yep.
We are architecting cognitive frames that exploit loss aversion and emotional desire. We are managing the subconscious flow of limbic data, and we are triggering evolutionary shortcuts like social proof and reciprocal altruism.
It's a comprehensive toolkit.
I have to be honest. When you view the toolkit in its entirety, it is staggeringly powerful. And in a vacuum, it still sounds like a weapon.
It can definitely seem that way.
It sounds like a highly sophisticated methodology for stripping away someone's defenses and bending them to your will. Which brings us to the most vital, overriding thesis of the entire text.
It brings us to the fundamental dividing line between a grifter playing a parlor trick and a genuine leader building an empire.
Right.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the anchor for every single technique we have discussed is found in the principle of the long game. The text says long-term influence depends on credibility and integrity.
The ultimate stress test of the framework.
Exactly. If we zoom out to the macro level, the text's overarching message is entirely dedicated to this distinction. It explicitly states that successful persuasion is not about manipulation.
Even though manipulation is technically possible using these tools.
Oh, absolutely. You might be able to exploit a fear, twist a cognitive frame, fake the body language, and trigger enough social proof to get a signature on a contract today.
So why not do it?
Because game theory, specifically the iterated prisoner's dilemma, mathematically proves why manipulation is a catastrophic strategy in the real world.
Because life isn't just one interaction.
Exactly. Human interactions are not isolated one-off games. We operate in continuous networks the moment the other person realizes they have been manipulated.
The moment they realize your frame was deceptive.
Yes, and that you prioritized your goals at the expense of their needs.
Your reputation within the network is incinerated.
Incinerated. The trust bridge is detonated, and the rubble is set on fire.
And without credibility, as we established way back at the beginning of the deep dive, you have zero foundation for future influence.
None at all.
Manipulation is the ultimate short-sighted play. It sacrifices a lifetime of cooperative leverage for a single momentary win.
Which is why the text's phrase, aligning your message with what others care about, is the operational core of ethical influence. It completely reframes the paradigm of getting what you want.
So true influence is never about conquest.
It is never about overriding someone's will. It is about the rigorous, empathetic work of discovering the exact overlap in the Venn diagram between your objectives and their deep-seated desires.
It's the transition from a zero-sum game to a positive-sum game. You are doing the heavy cognitive lifting to show them how walking the path you're suggesting is actually the most efficient way for them to get exactly what they already want.
And that is the ultimate metric of success. The source concludes by validating that ethical influence creates stronger relationships and better outcomes for everyone involved.
Because if it doesn't,
If the interaction doesn't leave both parties genuinely better off structurally and emotionally, you haven't persuaded them. You've merely exploited a temporary cognitive vulnerability.
wow. Let's recap the profound architecture we've explored today.
Let's do it.
We started by lifting the hood on human motivation, recognizing that we must map the specific needs, goals, fears, and desires driving the operating system of the person across from us.
Right.
We learned that before we can introduce a single piece of logic, we must bypass the amygdala's threat response by building radical trust.
Using tactical empathy to make them truly physiologically feel understood.
Exactly. With that safety established, we explored the engineering of the message. We learned to frame raw data through the lens of their emotional reality, fusing logical structure with the kinetic energy of human desire.
And we analyze the high bandwidth reality of body language, ensuring our ancient limbic system is congruent with our spoken words.
We leverage the evolutionary shortcuts of social proof to reduce cognitive friction and utilize reciprocal altruism to initiate cycles of cooperation.
And we anchored the entire framework in the unyielding bedrock of integrity, recognizing that in the iterated game of human life, your credibility is the only real currency you possess.
It is a phenomenal, rigorous framework for human connection.
But analyzing it at this depth leaves us with a rather profound philosophical question to consider.
Whoa, lay it on me.
Think about the ultimate progression of these skills. If you reach a level of mastery where you perfectly diagnose someone's hidden fears and aspirations,
Okay.
and you listen with such profound tactical empathy that the threat response completely vanishes,
Right.
and you flawlessly translate your goals into a frame that perfectly serves their reality,
Yeah.
does the concept of persuasion even exist anymore?
Right.
Yeah. Or have you simply mastered the ultimate art of seamless mutual collaboration? When both parties are fully aligned, who is actually persuading whom?
Wow. That completely shatters the initial premise. You aren't making people do what you want at all. You are just illuminating the path where both of you want the exact same thing.
Exactly.
It turns out, that villain's handbook we started with, it might just be the most rigorous, scientifically grounded guide to profound empathy you could ever study.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
We encourage you to take this architecture, test these mechanisms in your next high-stakes conversation, and see the complex world of human interaction through a completely brand new lens.